Hi there everyone, welcome back to Infinity Drones. Today we take a look at another update to the Drone Hacks application. We are now at version 1.26 and now we can just take a look at what is new. So if you click on what is new on the Drone Hacks website, you'll be able to see what is the current version. The latest version, as I said, is 1.26 and also the Android version and the latest compatible DJI Fly app. Now, if you scroll down, you can see all the information that you really need to know. But the best part is this latest version is ideally suited for the DJI FPV drone. So if you have that and you've wanted to get rid of the 0015 firmware so that you can use the Drone Hacks application, now you can. So now you are able to mod your DJI FPV drone to remove the no-fly zones, enable FCC mode, as well as unlock the altitude limit. Which is great because the whole purpose of FPV drone is to maybe do some mountain surfing, and the DJI FPV drone is fantastic because it is essentially all the advantages of a Mavic that you can do with the advantages of an FPV drone if you go into manual mode. However, if you can't go higher than 500 meters, you're not really going to do a really good mountain dive. So this is a great tool for those of you guys that want to use the FPV drone for some cinematic photography and videography. So really worth it. So this new version of Drone Hacks enables you to downgrade and get past that problematic firmware that cannot be modded or modified. So if you take a look at this as well, there's quite a few things that is new. Please note that this is not just for the DJI FPV drone, it is also an update to the application itself. Okay, so if you've got a Mini 2, for example, it does not support the latest firmware, so please do not update your Mini 2 firmware. But you also have support for the Mavic 3, which is not obviously a full support yet, but we're working on it, or they're working on it. But the big thing here is that the process that we will use will work on all of the other drones. So the easy thing, click on the Birdmap and you can go take a look at whichever drone that you require. Now, the same process will be for all of the drones out there. So you can click on maybe the Air 2, you can see that is the firmware version we have to be on. So if you're on any of these firmware versions, it's not going to work. You've got to downgrade to that one. But with a regular Drone Hacks license, you can see that it will tell you that it is possible to downgrade. So if you are on the more recent firmware, you are able to downgrade to the recommended firmware so that you are able to unlock your drone. Once again, guys, this is just a great shout out to Drone Hacks for sponsoring this video. They've given us 5 free license keys that we'll be giving away on the 3,000 subscriber mark. So please make sure you are subscribed. I am going to pick a random comment below, and then I will contact you guys via the comment section, which you can then send me a message on Instagram, and then if it is the one that I selected, I will be able to send you through your license key, which is great. So once again, thank you very much for Drone Hacks, and for everyone else watching, please make sure you subscribe, leave a comment below. You might be a very lucky user. So now that we know what the new features are, we can now proceed to get the whole thing started. This is almost a tutorial video on how to do the whole thing. So if you're new, follow along. If you've done this before, you can really skip to the sections that you need. I am going to try and put some chapters below so to make it a bit easier for everyone to follow. But the great thing here is that you've got everything here. I'm just going to go through some basics that you need to go through, like for instance installing DJI Assistant 2 and obviously the Drone Hacks application download, and then obviously the registering. I think everyone should be fine doing that themselves, but I will have a section in the video on that as well. So please keep a lookout in the description of this video, as there will be some chapter markers there to make things a bit easier for everyone else. But that said, guys, enjoy, and let's get your drone free. So on your computer, you can go to DJI Download Center. Just Google it. You're going to find the DJI Download Center over there. Just click on the Download Center. And this is quite important because most of you would not probably have the correct software. So go to software, you're going to see there's the DJI Assistant 2 series option, but there's quite a few, and this confuses so many people. In this case, we need the DJI FPV series one, but a lot of guys would have the incorrect one over here. So go to DJI Assistant 2 for FPV series, and then you've got a Mac version and a Windows version. I've already have this installed, but you can simply just click the exe or the zip and it will download to your machine. Once you've downloaded this to your machine, you can then type in DJI Assistant 2 for FPV series, and it is going to open up automatically. Now, downloading this to your machine is very important because it will automatically have all the drivers connected. Because my drone is already connected to the PC, it already picks it up. If it does not, it means that you probably have a driver issue on your machine. Now, as you can see, it's going to pop up updating no-fly zones. I don't care, so I'm going to say ignore. But here you guys can see we only have this firmware version. We cannot downgrade, we cannot do anything else. This is the firmware version we are now stuck on, and we've got no other option to get past this. So what do? We've got a problem now. So we need to downgrade to another version so that we are able to use the DroneHacks mod. So what do? We're just going to go to the DroneHacks website. Simply just type into Google DroneHacks. You go to the dronehacks.com website. And the first thing we want to do is we want to know what firmware version must be on for the hack to work. So there's a Birdmap on the top of the screen. Click on that. And then we're going to scroll down and select our DJI FPV Racer. Now, if we select it, you're going to see that we know that we are currently on this firmware version. Now, this firmware version essentially gives us nothing really. We need to downgrade our firmware. A lot of us might actually be on this firmware version, which is also a problem because it doesn't support the mods. We want to be on the latest one. Now, these other firmware versions, they don't give you any real advantage. This is just DJI blocking out the DroneHacks application. So if you go to 102.0.0.0, you can see that we have signal hacking, which is FCC mode, great, better range for us that are not in the US. And then also you've got the ability to remove the no-fly zone limits. Now, you can click on buy a license, and it pops up on the side of your screen, and you can then essentially select one, and it costs 40 euros. If you want to go to checkout, you can click there, and you can then create an account yourself. I personally recommend creating a separate account, just a Gmail account, and then you can log in with this, because that account that you log in, you could essentially give to the person that's going to buy your drone in case you're going to sell it maybe in the future. Okay, so that is a nice option for you to have. But in this case, this drone needs to be updated, and we cannot do anything else without a DroneHacks license key. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the DroneHacks website. I'm just going to go back. I'm not going to buy anything now. I want to download the application. So before we buy a license, we might as well just download the application. So just click on download, click on DJI, and then depending on what operating system you use, you can use this. We do not support Mac. We only support Windows 10 officially. There are some cases where this works on Windows 11, but we officially support Windows 10. In this case, you can click on this one, and then we're just going to download the file to our machine. Now, once it's downloaded to your machine, just going to open it up. You might get a message like this. Don't worry, just click on that and say run anyway. Please guys, we do not use Windows 7 or Windows 8. Now, here I'm going to try and log into the application. I already have an account, but since we are going to go through the whole purchasing mode at the moment, you must have an account set up on the system and the software is working. Now, we already know that our DJI Assistant is on the latest firmware, so therefore we can close this now. DroneHacks will not work if you've got both of these applications open, so I'm going to close this one. And you can see something went wrong because the device wasn't able to connect. So all I'm going to do is I am going to disconnect my quad, and I'm going to reconnect it because this time it can now connect to the DroneHacks application. As you can see, it's now searching for a device. and you can see device connected, and it now displays my current firmware version, and it also tells me that I need to be on the correct firmware. Now, it also logged me in. If you have your own login details, then of course you can do that as well. I can go to the hacking tab, but you can see that I can't because I don't have a valid license linked up to this. I can go to the firmware tab, and this is where you are going to downgrade the firmware. Now, because we need to be on the correct firmware, we need to download the correct app. But before we do any of this, we first need to purchase a license. Now, let me just quickly go back to the side over here. If you've gone to the whole purchase license option, let me just quickly go to the checkout. There's my regular license. It's €40. You click proceed. You can create your own account, and once you've done this, it will be linked to your username and password. So as soon as you link it up to this account, then you will be able to use it from there. So for those of you guys that have been lucky enough to win the free Drone Hacks license keys, what you're going to do is you are essentially going to go and create yourself an account, sign up, and then you're going to log in. If you have forgotten that step, don't worry, you can essentially just go to the Birdmap itself, and this actually is going to apply to anyone that's going to purchase the license itself. What you're going to do is you're going to select the drone you want to. It doesn't matter which drone really, but you can click on the one you want to. In our case, we are going to mod the DJI FPV drone, and you can see what mods are available. So in this case, I'm going to click on buy a license. I can have my regular license. Now, if I have my gift card, you guys can use this one. You guys can see the one I got here, it won't work anymore. I have already used it. So as you can just see that my free license has now been applied, and I can click proceed to checkout. Now, I have not signed in or logged in, and here you've got a whole option where you can sign in if you want to, or you can just click and then log in yourself. Once you've logged in, you can say you're going to accept the terms and conditions. You've got your billing address, and then you must choose your payment method. Now, if you don't choose a payment method, the submit button will not be available. However, if you increase to one or more licenses, as you can see, I am still going to be purchasing 2 licenses, but I am getting a discount of €40. So I'm essentially only paying €40, but now my submit order option is available. Remember, this is if you want to purchase more than 1 license. Now, you can click on change payment method, and you can see there's a bunch of options you can select from. But in our scenario, I just want to have a free license because one of the lucky guys is going to win the voucher. Essentially is going to get a free license. So here we go again. I'm going to say accept, choose payment method, and you can see there is an option called free. When you select it, you click save, and that is it. Your license will get linked to your account. So remember, the account you signed up with, that is the account you're going to link up with. So in this case, click submit. And you're going to see it, thank you very much, it's got all the information, and then it's got all your information there as well, and that is it. This is all you need to do. The license has now been linked to your Drone Hacks account, and you can now actually proceed to open your Drone Hacks account and then log in and see if it is actually taken. So in this case, I'm going to open my Drone Hacks account. I'm going to hook up my DJI FPV drone and power it up. Now that's starting to power up, Drone Hacks will automatically detect it. Remember, you have to have a DJI Assistant 2 installed. In our case, previously you would have seen that we have already installed the firmware, and we are up to the latest firmware. And now, as soon as the Drone Hacks detects the drone itself, it will ask, would you like to bind it? Now remember, I've already logged in with my Drone Hacks account. Now, if you've created a brand new one, you would have to log in first. But because I've been using Drone Hacks for quite a while, it just auto logs me in whenever I open the application. In this case, I would like to register this license to this drone, so I'm going to click register license, and that is done. That license is now linked to this drone. Essentially, 1 license per drone. You cannot use the license on any other drone anymore. It's linked to this drone serial number. So in this case, click OK, and it's going to go over to the hack exploits. Now currently there is no exploits available for this drone because we are on the incorrect firmware. What we need to do is we need to get to the correct firmware. Now, what is the correct firmware, you may ask? Well, the correct firmware, let's just go to the DroneHacks website, is as per the Birdmap. Whenever you guys have questions, just come straight to the Birdmap. It is going to answer 90.99% of all your questions. In this case, you can see we are on this one. We don't want to be on this one. We need to be on this one. Now, you typically couldn't downgrade it, as we saw in the DJI Assistant application. It could not downgrade the application. It only had a current firmware there. DJI is locking you to that firmware version. So what we do now is we go to the DroneX application and we can click on download firmware. And you guys are going to notice it is automatically going to open a website called Dank Drone Downloader. It is automatically going to tell you which firmware you're going to have to download to install. As you can see, we want that firmware. It's automatically going to fill in everything for you, and you're going to click the submit button. All you do then is click the download button, and there we go. And there we go, download complete. So this is actually quite simple. What we do is I'm just going to open this. You can actually just leave it there. The firmware has been downloaded. So now that it's been downloaded, you can go to the DroneX application. You can choose firmware. You can go to wherever you downloaded it from, and you'll see there is my firmware version. I'm going to click open, and I'm going to click flash. But as you can see, I can't. So what this system is going to do, because I've got the DroneHacks license, there's no other way to do this. Because you've got the DroneX license, you get access to the special firmware that they've cooked up. So if I click OK, it's going to go open Dank Downloader, and this is the only way you can get this firmware. Click submit, click download, and now we get the intermediate firmware, essentially that middle ground that's going to roll back the anti-rollback firmware, meaning that we are able to downgrade to older versions of the firmware. So let's just quickly wait for this to finish downloading. And there we go, basically done. Very important that you guys know that the firmware version you're going to install can't downgrade if the anti-rollback isn't the correct number. So this number over here we can't go to because our current firmware doesn't allow it. So here we're going to use the special firmware and we're going to flash that, and that is essentially going to see our anti-rollback values are identical. We are allowed to downgrade. So we are now essentially loading additional firmware to the platform, which is going to enable us to load an older firmware version without having the anti-rollback locked in place. All you've got to do now is essentially just wait for it to download or upload to the drone itself and then install. So just give it some time. There we go. As you guys can see, flashing is now completed. We haven't done anything else except click the upload and flash button, and now the drone has restarted, and you guys are going to see that it is going to connect, and we are now on the 14 firmware. So now we want to go to the correct firmware version. So let's just go to our firmware page, click choose firmware, go to our download space, but because we've already downloaded the correct firmware, because the system guides you through the whole process, as you guys can see, it literally guides you through the whole thing step by step. Now we're just going to flash the correct firmware. So the whole process we just done, we're just doing exact same thing again with the correct firmware version we want to be on. Now we will be able to download or upgrade or downgrade to the firmware version we want to be on. Now, one of the big things you guys are going to notice is this time nothing really happens on this screen, but the drone is going to restart quite a few times. You just have to trust the section. There's no indication of what's going on. It is flashing, but it's not showing it on the front, and it's as if the system or the drone itself doesn't know it's being flashed by an older firmware. You'll hear that it disconnects and connects to the PC quite a few times, and the drone will just randomly restart. this is completely normal, and it will probably restart 5, 6, 7 times before the whole process is completed. This is also what's going to happen with the new Air 2 and the Air 2S and all of the newer drones that are out there with the mods. You guys are going to notice that it will do this exact same step because there's an intermediate firmware you need to load before you can load the correct one. Remember, we can only mod this firmware version, so everything we are doing is getting to that version. As you can see now, we have now completed it, and look at that. Let's just quickly see. Oh, downgrade has failed, it says. Let's just quickly check what it says over here. Login successful. Let's quickly see if it's gonna detect my drone. It did not load correctly. So let's just try again. Firmware has a lower anti-rollback value as the drone. You need to downgrade via the exploit. Click flash. And you guys can see the whole message pops up. This is what you're going to get. This is what you should get. Okay, so I'm just going to click OK again and let it run through the whole process. It has to go through the exploit version. And there you guys can see, finally the mod is completed. I haven't done anything on my side, and you can see the first time it didn't prompt us with the correct one. We just simply disconnected and reconnected to drone hacks. It detected the drone and flashed the entire firmware stack. So in this case, I want to have FCC mode enabled because that is going to increase my range significantly. Really worth it. So there we go, just click hack. It will do it automatically for you. So literally just click the button, and now I'm waiting for it to do. Drone's going to restart quite a few times, as you can hear there, and once that's done, it is going to prompt on the screen that the FCC hack has been enabled. After that's done, we're going to move over to the altitude removal and the no-fly zone removal, but let's just quickly wait for the FCC mod to complete. There we go. As you guys can see, it says clearly never update the firmware. If you update the firmware of the drone, you will lose the mods. Remember, the serial that you've purchased, the license key, is linked to your serial number, so you can always just downgrade again. But there's no saying that DJI is not going to release a new firmware in the future that's going to block everything again. Currently, we can downgrade, but I would strongly recommend never updating anything again, just because we don't know what DJI is going to do. So in this case, you guys can see signal strength has now been applied. We're just going to restart the device to make sure that it accepts the new mod or the new tool. I'm just going to shut it down. There we go, and turn it back on again. And then we can do the last mod. Well, there's an error that popped up for no reason. As you can see, not supported, but it is supported. So just give it a second to carry on. If you see that, just restart the drone. It's just because you started it up, it hasn't detected everything yet. As you can see, I've logged in, it's detected my license is valid, and we can move on. So here we go. There we go. My license key is a regular one. Now I want to remove the altitude limit and the no-fly zones. This is a certificate that it loads onto the drone. It's not a firmware mod or of any kind, but this is the thing. With the DJI FPV drone, you really need to remove that altitude limit, because if you are going to be doing some mountain diving or mountain surfing, you're most likely going to be next to a little hill that's more than 500 meters. So the whole law of 500 meters, yes, I understand it. Be safe, be responsible, be 100% responsible. You could have someone's life or lives affected by your decision. So please, please, please fly responsibly. However, with this drone, flying in the mountains, you need to be able to fly higher than 500 meters. In this case, I'm going to click hack, and that is going to remove my altitude limits as well as my no-fly zone. This no-fly zone, it will enable you to fly anywhere. Essentially, the drone is not going to care where it's going to take off. It's still going to warn you within the DJI Fly app, as you can see here. Please respect your local laws and regulations. But this is for the few places where DJI has their own no-fly zones in place, which just doesn't conform to your country or anything like that. We've got an example where there's a farm locally which has been labeled a no-fly zone for some random reason, and there's no planes, no airfield, nothing there, but it's labeled a no-fly zone and you can't fly there. We don't know why, it's just there. So in this case, we can click and we can remove the no-fly zone, and the drone is just going to restart a few times as previously mentioned. And once that's done, you will have a completely unlocked drone. Let's just give it a couple of minutes to just complete. And there we have it. So once again, do not update your firmware. As soon as you update the firmware, you are going to get a problem. So there we go. Everything has now been done. You should now be able to fly your drone anywhere without any altitude limits, and you will have FCC mode enabled, meaning that you will have better range and longer distance. Okay, so better signal as well. So better penetration, better everything really. Now, let's just quickly go back. If you want to remove these mods, you can go back to the hacking and you can just click on stock and undo the hack. It's very simple to do, or you can simply just flash the firmware again or refresh it with DJI Assistant. But your advantage that you've got now is DJI Assistant for FPV. Just going to quickly open it up. Now, if you see this and you see it's not connecting, well, it's because DroneX is open. So we need to close the DroneX application. And as soon as we do, you'll see that it can connect. Now, once you've opened the DJI Assistant application, you're going to see that it pops up, updating no fly. You can ignore this, and it says there we can upgrade. It doesn't even show the other ones, but you can see clearly our firmware is there. So if you want to remove the mod, you simply click upgrade and your problem will be solved. Now, one very, very, very important thing that we need to discuss is that if you still get the upgrade message in your goggles, it's because your goggles are not on the correct firmware. Your goggles need to be on this firmware version over here. If it's not the same, you're going to get a warning or an upgrade message in your goggles. So you will need to upgrade your goggles to the later firmware. And this you can do either via drone hacks, or you can do it via DJI Assistant 2 over here for FPV. Now, once you have upgraded it, the message should disappear. If it does not disappear, simply just, well, this I'll show you quickly. All we've got to do is just quit this. All you've got to do is simply just open DroneX again and then reload the certificate. So just go to hacking. I'm just going to wait for it to connect. And if you do get that upgrade message after your goggles has been upgraded to the latest version and you still get the message in your goggles, then simply all you need to do is just rerun this altitude limit NFZ hack again. That's all you will need to do to remove that message from your goggles screen. Now, I know there are some of you guys that do not want to upgrade to the latest version of DJI goggles because you will use the ability to use a root, but I'm assuming if you are flying the DJI FPV drone, then you should be fine and you shouldn't be worried too much about the root mod you could get for the normal FPV drones. We are going to take a look at how to upgrade and downgrade your goggle firmware as well using DJI Assistant, but that will be in another video. Okay guys, thank you very much for watching. If you guys enjoy the content that I'm making, please go to the comments below and make a comment, as well as click the subscribe button and the bell. And please guys, also this drone hacks guys, they are doing some amazing work. Please make sure you guys go and support them. Thank you very much. Until the next time. And as you can see, there's now a message, aircraft firmware version out of date, check and update to the latest firmware version. So if I click OK, you can see that I can see my screen in front of me, but unfortunately, I cannot connect with the controller. So let me quickly just jump over to the DJI Fly. So as you can see, I have now connected my phone to my controller. I can click on the Go Fly button, but I'm unable to take off because there is a firmware update required. This is terrible because what now? I can't do anything. So I can do is I click on the update button, but then what? I still can't do anything. Even if you look at the goggles, there's nothing for me to do. Everything is connected, but I can't fly. So if I click on the update, you'll see there's the firmware update I need to do. And that means the only thing I can do is to click the update button. So now I am installing the update to my drone, not the goggles. The goggles are already on this firmware version. It's just the drone that's not on this firmware version. So I'm essentially now waiting for it to update to the latest version. The sad thing here is that I'm completely prevented from flying until I do the firmware update. So if you have used your device and you've reached this point and you've connected your drone to the DJI Fly app, it might prompt you or essentially trigger this forced update, and you cannot get past it unless you update the firmware. So for all of those of you that do not want to upgrade because you do have the Drone Hacks license maybe on, or you want to remove the no-fly zones and fly as you please, then well, you can't. You'll have to update to the latest firmware, meaning it will update to a version that is not supported. Luckily, the new Drone Hacks 1.2.6 version has come out that enables you to downgrade the DJI FPV drone to a version that you are allowed to use the mod on, meaning that you can remove the no-fly zones and you can remove the altitude limits as well. This is great because 500 meters is not close for a nice mountain dive. So really need this mod essentially to make this DJI FPV drone what it's really capable of doing.